Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live, talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Hey there, welcome. Welcome to the show. Let's get a date in here just for posterity's purposes. Are my peas popping? August 25th. Good God. Oh dear, guys. Always have the same problem. Where the hell to start? I hate to start with the dead, but frankly, I think a lot of people were stunned to learn that Charlie Watts had died. I mean, it's funny. I was out after the show yesterday. I happened to go out, run an errand. I was in a shop and the phone rang in the shop, not my phone. And the owner grabbed the phone and there was a second of silence. And then she said, yeah, I know. Isn't it just, it's just so awful. You just didn't, I can't believe it either. You knew. The people immediately were turning to other people to say, Charlie Watts died. I am a die-hard Rolling Stones fan. They are my favorite band. I never went to concerts much, not because I didn't want to hear the music, but because I could never stand the crowds. And then later on, I don't know exactly when it happened, when the crowds I couldn't stand when they were actually sitting began to stand through the whole concert, I really stopped going. I thought, what is the point of me buying a seat if nobody uses them? So anyway, I've always been grumpy by nature and somewhat solitary, so that's why But I've seen the Stones, I think, twice here. I had thought about going to their next concert here and thought, no, I had already decided. Now, without Charlie Watts, forget about it. Anyway, reading about him in the obituaries, not surprisingly, exactly what you would have expected. He was, as he appeared, quiet, debonair, serious, and not your typical rock star. He wanted to be a jazz drummer. And I feel one of the quotes, and he got little jazz groups together. In fact, Charlie Watts played Pittsburgh, I think in the late 80s, right? With one of his jazz bands. But he said that during all those shows that I saw him at, because I saw him before I was here in Pittsburgh as well, but at all of those big, stadium venues that I saw him at, he said he would always just sort of pretend that he was in the Blue Note or Birdland with Charlie Parker in front of him and not Mick Jagger's, little ass, which he also commented on is all he ever saw for 40 years. He said it was an illusion that he conjured to make it more bearable because he found all the hoo-ha about being a rock star to be, well, he said it, I think it's silly. It's not what I want it to be. And so I tried to do the math in my head. I think I did it right. He was married to the same woman for 57 years. just sort of a solid human. I am, and one of the cutest things, he really was extremely talented as a graphic artist. And he said when they would be on tour, after a show, he would just go back to whatever hotel room he was given, while sometimes the others would go out and party. And he took to sketching whatever bed he was sleeping on. And it became something he did. He said, I have drawn every bed I've slept in on tour since 1967. Well, I wish somebody would compile that and put it out there for all of us. Because he even said it's a fantastic non-book. Well, somebody make it into a book. Oh, God. It's only rock and roll. Okay, I mean, I'm sure if you're Stones fans, you're gobbling up all the information you can. So I'll cease and desist. And before I get into heavier stuff, if you'll allow me, I want to talk about somebody else who's no longer here. And this is a result of me trying to organize all this stuff that's still on my table. The clippings, the articles, the pictures, the letters. It's amazing. But I came upon this wonderful piece written by a former reporter for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette long ago, Dennis Roddy, who was one of my favorites because he was such a damn fine writer. I mean, he still is a damn fine writer, I'm sure. I follow him on Twitter now. But Dennis Roddy, who later, he left the Post-Gazette and became, and I hope I get this right, the PR guy, the PR flack for governor. What governor was that? Please tell me it wasn't Corbett. Please. It might have been. Although it might have been, but a Republican governor. I'm afraid it was Corbett. But he wrote a piece that brought me back to memories of one of the sort of, you know, how some people just take over a room. They are by nature larger in their presence. I'm not talking actually larger. They just, by their exuberance, by their personality, their charisma. And Dennis Roddy wrote a piece about one such man after his death. And it's a death that I well remember because he was a friend of mine. And as I was going through all this stuff, I not only found this wondrous piece by Dennis Roddy, but I found the eulogy that I delivered at the funeral. So you're wondering, who the heck is he talking about? If you've been in Pittsburgh for some time, and if you were a political junkie, you will know the name. If not, you will not, in all likelihood, because he died in 1997 at the age of 61, which was so it was one of those deaths that just startled. Dropped dead doing what he did love to do, playing golf with a bunch of politicos. Mossie Murphy. I guess if you said, what did Mossie Murphy do? Well, I think he was a political operative or political figure, or he was always in the middle and midst of politics. And he became a political analyst for the TV station that I worked for, WTAE, which is how I was able to meet him. But what a wondrous character. And if I may, for those of you who do remember, because this is one of those characters you don't want to ever forget. This is a life lived large. I'm not going to read this whole thing. I'm just going to read. There's one line that just made me howl out loud. It is so right on the money. But let me share this with you. This is Dennis Roddy about Mossie Murphy, a man whose politics he did not share. Mossy was a real liberal Democrat. Dennis Roddy says this: he was volatile, opinionated, troublesome, and ultimately captivating. We will miss him, not in spite of his faults, but because of them. They made him interesting in the way a man ought to be interesting, if only to counterbalance a time in which observers of politics strive tiresomely to seem neutral. Well, see, that's not true anymore. He wrote this in 1997 and ends up as tasty as the intellect as boiled kidneys. Here's where he describes him that is just spot on brilliant. Mossy, his name was Maurice. Mossy was different. He had a loud mouth and loud ways, wore his political bias on the outside. The very set of his jaw suggested an imminent fistfight. His hair, this is the line I love, his hair looked as if it had been tossed to him from across the room and was being worn the way it landed. He ran up an impressive list of bad debts, while on the other side, slipping cash to families behind on their mortgages, or making up the balance of a young man's tuition money. And then Roddy goes on to bemoan the loss of characters. I know I used to do that with regularity too. We used to have so many wondrous characters in politics. And then we became just like everybody else. It's like the homogenization of the American countryside, how the outskirts of every town look like every other town. And now politicians are blow dried, except for Fetterman is one now that is not. But, you know, they all look a certain way. And so the characters are gone. And I just want to talk about this example when he says that Mossy was piling up bad debts, even while slipping people he really didn't even know money. And in my eulogy, I alluded to that because this was something I learned during my friendship with him, and I learned it late because Mossy lived so large that, well, I assumed that he was rich as hell. And in the eulogy, I said he was a huge Duquesne basketball fan. I mean, apparently on the when a game was held, I mean, he was on the floor leading cheers half the time. I believe when he died, the seat he always sometimes sat in was said to, no one was ever going to sit in that seat. The president of Duquesne at the time said, it will be Mossy's seat forever. But in my eulogy, I said, one of the Duquesne Dukes basketball players is quoted in today's newspaper saying he thought Mossy was a billionaire. And I said, I only thought he was a multi-millionaire. And we were both wrong. Although our mistaken impressions are understandable, his generosity was, well, I said it's like a Santa Claus on amphetamines. And he didn't care if you'd been naughty or nice. He'd probably like you better if you'd been naughty. And I think his generosity was most evidenced by his own home. Because when you went to Mossy's house, it was always full. I mean, full. It was a big house and it was full. He had about 120 children that I could tell. I could never quite figure out. There were so many people there. And I mentioned that in my eulogy. Pity the poor census taker who shows up at 2771 Beechwood and asks, how many people live in this house? Because at any given time, no one could give you a straight answer, including Mossy's wonderful wife, Carol. Because he was forever bringing people home. Not just for dinner, not just for a few days, although he would often tell Carol, he's going to stay here for a few days, okay? But for years. In some cases, for a lifetime. When a neighboring family suffered a horrible loss where both parents died, leaving, and I'm going to get these numbers wrong, I think leaving 5 or 6 children orphaned. Mossy took them in. And they were young. Those were young kids. So there were those children who were every bit as much his children you would never know than his own children. How many people do stuff like that? And he wasn't rich. Oh, well, I want to thank Dennis Roddy for helping me remember and this man that should not be forgotten. I think he was on my radio show all the time. And I think it was after his appearance on one of my WTAE radio shows that, I don't know if it was then, but it was the beginning of the end for him as a political analyst here, because he ended up in a fight in the parking lot with with the Republican, I don't know if he was the commissioner then, the Republican commissioners, Larry Dunn and Cranmer. I'm sorry, my memory's so bad, but the pugnacity of Mossy was legendary. Anyway, just wanted those of you who remember him to remember him, because he is missed. All right. Enough of the dead. I guess we gotta head back into the land of the living. God, you see how much I don't want to. You didn't happen to see something that happened, I think it was yesterday. No, I missed it too. It's so it's so ironic and so sort of metaphoric and perfect. A horse-drawn carriage carrying a coffin passed through the gates of Arlington National Cemetery yesterday, I think, or Monday maybe. And at the gravesite were it was like a reunion, were all of the people who brought us in to Afghanistan and then to Iraq. It was like this big reunion. They were burying Don Rumsfeld. So Dick Cheney was there. And you remember, what was his name? Wolfowitz. Oh, God. All the guys responsible for the 20 years of unwinnable war. And to read about this event at Arlington, man, they were having a hell of a time. They were laughing and laughing. Of course, they were remembering their buddy and having a lot of fun. Remember when Don Rummy did this? Remember when Cheney was the lead mourner? So how perfect is that? That as people are scrambling for their lives to get out of that hellhole that these guys got us into, they traded war stories and laughed. Good time. The reporting on this say that the words Afghanistan or Iraq were rarely mentioned during the course of this. Here's something that was mentioned. The Secretary of Defense was there, but because I guess you had to be, I guess when a Secretary of Defense gets buried, the sitting Secretary of Defense, it would be unseemly if you weren't there to watch and make sure he was put in the ground. So in this very busy time for Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, he was there at Arlington burying the jerk who got him into the situation that he's now in, the current Secretary of Defense. And also there was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, who is sort of busy these days, but he had to take time. He's apparently, General Milley knelt in front of Rumsfeld's widow as he handed her the flag that had draped her husband's coffin. How'd I end up back with dead people? I thought I said, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Didn't I say I see dead people? I started out, didn't I say, let's go to the thing, and I ended up back in a cemetery. Dang it. Okay. Well, okay, let's just, while we're there, let's stay in Afghanistan. Hey, I have been silent about this. I have eschewed talking about the over-the-top, hyperbolic ridiculousness of cable news and news in general. in the reporting of the messy end of this mess of a 20-year war. Like it should have all of a sudden been pristinely done. Like all of a sudden we should be looking extraordinarily competent and prescient. There is no doubt that Joe Biden did the right thing in getting us out. Someone had to finally do it instead of just wringing their hands and talking about it. We could be there for the next 5 million years. We were never going to win. And apparently we're never going to learn. I think I said earlier in the week, I believe I was quoting Fareed Zakaria, who said, there is no dignified way to lose a war. But to listen to the pontificators and the media, you would think that this had always been some impeccable operation that had only fallen into disarray upon Joe Biden's ascendancy to the presidency. What prompted me to finally stop my silence is something that was written in the New York Times today, and I am appreciative of it because it just very clearly delineates the question that you would want these complainers and finger pointers to acknowledge, which is, well, what would you have done differently? I mean, we're hearing a lot of complaints. Do you have a, but he shoulda, woulda, coulda? And David Leonhardt, who I more and more think of as like the guy I want to listen to. He writes a wonderful daily bit called The Morning for the New York Times, and it's worth the price of admission. He has been a calm, clear voice during the pandemic, cutting through the crap, and in this case as well. And he said there is a naivete about much of the commentary and hand-wringing that's going on about Afghanistan, because it all presumes that there was some clean way to get out. If only they had, you fill in the blanks, because these pundits never do. There is no, again, there's no dignified or elegant way to lose a war. The biggest mistake, of course, was staying there after we'd gotten the Taliban, not the Taliban, the Al-Qaeda, because that's why we supposedly went in. They were giving safe haven to Osama bin Laden. And damn it, we were hurt and we were pissed and we had to fight. And I was for that. Go get those SOBs. I didn't mean the Taliban. I meant Al-Qaeda. And we did. So, do you remember, maybe, if you watched, that the president of Afghanistan was at the White House? I remember being shocked when I saw he was at the White House, because it was not too long ago. It was the end of June. And there was, the usual pictures of the president sitting in one chair and the president of Afghanistan in the other, Ashraf Ghani. And we learned later that one of the things that Ashraf Ghani was saying to Biden was that, hey, look, I know you're leaving, but please don't make a mad dash to grant exit visas to all these people who worked with you, because it's going to look as if America does not have faith in my government. I mean, excuse me. Ashraf Ghani wanted, you can't make this up. This Ghani the reason they fell in 2 days is because, Ghani went, he disappeared. But the real reason that we didn't get these guys out sooner is that, and I don't really know this stuff, is that the former president, Donald Trump, and this will not be surprising to you, was not into allowing refugees into the United States. And I assure you that Donald Trump and Stephen Miller, who was very much part and parcel of this problem with getting these translators and others out, didn't want Muslims, because that's what they are, brown-skinned Muslims, coming into our country. They didn't want anyone coming into our country except people from Norway, I believe Trump once famously said. And so here is, nothing ever gets put in context. Trump, and even before Trump, Republicans, when they had congressional power, intentionally and constantly tried to screw up our immigrant visa program because they didn't want those people in. The very program that we are now using to bring those in Afghanistan who partnered with us to our country. When he was president, Obama asked that the cap for this program be lifted so he could be getting more people out. Senate Republicans put the kibosh on that. And then Trump comes in and he starts slowing down the processes. He, with his appointments, makes sure that people understand if your job is to process immigrant visas, don't do it. Do it with one hand tied behind your back. So when Trump, well, he didn't hand off the reins, as you know. When Biden becomes president, there are over 10,000 of these visa requests that are clogging the pipeline. No, 17,000, excuse me. And so Trump and the Republicans, quite openly, destroyed almost every refugee program that could help desperate people like these get out. You know how many Trump let in the 4 years he was here? The White House. We're not in the White House. Why did I say here? 400. 400. When Biden came up, they had to start sort of like rebuilding the entire program. And Republicans are still making it clear they don't want more Afghan refugees in the United States. Stephen Miller, the xenophobic, racist creep of all time, was quoted recently as saying this: resettling Afghans in America is not about solving a humanitarian crisis. It's about accomplishing an ideological objective to change America. That's the racist thing. They're making, this is all an effort to make us less Christian, less white. So when you look at the catastrophe, not in Afghanistan, which is over the top, the fact is apparently that the number of people that we have gotten out is extraordinary. And if media didn't always need to frame everything in a negative way, they would be extolling this, because the end of any war will have pictures and videos and realities that you cannot bear to watch. Mind-blowing. I'm sorry, I have a call. Is the caller still there? Forgive me. Oops, I did that again. Hello.
Hi there. Good morning.
Oh, hello. Hi.
I called about Charlie Watts, but then you went on all these other things.
Oh, well, stay with Charlie, because I prefer that.
Okay.
What'd you call what you fairly do?
What's interesting is, okay, he was 80 years old.
Right.
But what's funny to me is in 1981, me and my friends got tickets to the Rolling Stones concert right outside DC. They were playing at the Capitol Center, and back then, I don't know if you remember this but when somebody big like the Rolling Stones was going to play somewhere, they just didn't put the tickets on sale. They made an announcement like at midnight, so people would have to stop what they're doing, wake up, and then run out to the venue and stand in line and buy tickets, because that was supposed to be cool. So I remember it was a Saturday night. We had been partying, and we really should have been going home, but we were like, "Oh, gotta go get tickets." We stood out till like 3 or 4 in the morning. We got our tickets, and we had to see them because we thought it was their farewell concert tour.
Why wouldn't you think that, right?
Well, back then, they were almost 40 years old, and you didn't have old rock and roll stars back then.
No,
they all died or just were one-hit wonders or whatever. And it was amazing. It was a great concert. I don't know how Mick Jagger did it. I mean, because he doesn't just sing. He's like doing like the 20-minute workout for like 2.5 hours. Aerobically. I mean, it's just crazy.
I was at, his last concert here at Heinz Field. He had to be in his 70s then, and he was all over. I mean, I have videos on my phone of him all over the place.
The Doug Hurst, though, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but this is how I remember. He had a great quote about Keith Richards. Do you remember that one?
No, tell me.
It says Keith Richards is actually dead, but somebody forgot to tell him because he looked like hell. He had lines on his face, but he had lines on his face when he was 25.
I know. He'll be. You know what? I bet he'll be the last one standing.
You watch. He's preserved. Something's inside preserved.
I don't know. And I do want to, his book that he put out, his autobiography, is just ingenious. And so much of what I see in these obits about Watts is pulled directly from the stories Richards tells in his book. Oh, gosh. Yeah.
Hey, I'll make an observation, and maybe this is me being, biased on my age, but it just seemed like musicians, especially of past, they are much more complicated. I don't know.
Well,
very artistic in many different ways. Very artistic in many different ways. I don't know. They surprise you. They surprise you.
Yeah, but you don't know that that's true. It just seems that way. I don't know. When someone is present in, it's the present time, the complexity is not always apparent. Although
True.
There's more of a, manufactured, thing that can go on with musicians, but that was always happening. The manufactured kind of celebrities and bands, and those are usually not all that interesting. But no, I suspect that in 40 years we'll find out that, well, I don't think we will. That like Justin Timberlake was incredibly interesting. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. But anyway,
that was my story.
That's a cute story.
I was a kid.
Yeah,
I was a teenager or 20 years old, and it was just like they were old, and we better hurry up and see them before they all died before they were 40 years old. It was just really funny, and now they're just.
Well, it's why
a lot of them are still rolling.
I know. Why I still used to. That was always what I was thinking. So I saw him at Heinz Field. Then I see him at, what was that, PNC? Then I see him at, and it's always because, my God, they're old. You got to go see them. It's the same thing with Dylan. I used to go all the time, and then he just kept showing up, and I thought, screw it. First of all, I didn't recognize any of the songs he sang. I don't think anybody did, because he reworks them. So anyway, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right.
Okay.
Stay positive on something today. I don't want to talk about Rumsfeld and that.
Okay. I'm done.
All right.
Bye.
Me too. Bye.
Bye. Actually, I do have one. I don't have anything positive left here. I'm sorry. I have a little thing where I remind myself of what I got. There's another story I haven't talked about because it seemed far away, both geographically and in terms of time, but it's so anymore. And I keep reading more and more about it, and it gets more and more troubling. There's the recall election in California of the state's this very democratic state's Democratic governor, Gavin Newsom, who doesn't float my boat, I'll tell you. Yeah. He's like the classic kind of politician now, good looking, beautiful family. God, he was married to that horror that is now Trump Jr.'s girlfriend. That's god-awful human. So right there, Gavin Newsom is like, forget it. But he is the democratically elected governor of an overwhelmingly Democratic state. But this is a state, as you know, that has really crazy politics. And one of the things they have that other states don't have is an extremely easy recall protocol. So the Republicans went after him, and it has to do with his handling of the pandemic, masks, the fact that he told everyone to wear masks and then he was seen partying somewhere without one. So hypocrisy. And we keep hearing, I mean, for months now, that there's a great deal of concern that he's going to lose and that a Republican's going to win. How the hell can a Republican win a California statewide election? And when you see who the Republican who's ahead, well, it's mind-blowing. This is not how to do democracy. There are 46 candidates. And most of them are Republicans. In order to win, all you need. Wait, I'm sorry. Wait a minute. This is, I don't even, if a majority of voters don't pick Newsom, the governor. Now, remember, you got 48 candidates. So add up all of those up of the 47 candidates. And you can see how it'd be pretty hard to get a majority. If you total up, I mean, Newsom's one of them, but then there's these other 45. Put all their numbers together. And the odds are they'll be bigger than Newsom. And so if a majority of voters choose to not vote for Newsom, to keep him in office, then the person with the next most votes becomes governor. So that means Newsom could have, and will have, I don't even understand this. So none of these Republicans has consistently polled above 20%. Newsom is polling around 48%. And yet it could well be that somebody who most people don't want will end up being governor. And right now, apparently, that looks like this lunatic, right-wing talk show host, Larry Elder. He calls global warming a crock. He opposes any minimum wage. And he vows he'll lift all COVID instructions when he's elected. The people who instigated this stupidity, who garnered the recall petitions, the votes and the signatures and all of that, are Republicans, and they're freaked out, as usual, because Republicans create monsters and then they lose control of them. They're just, really needs to be called the Frankenstein Party, because that's what they do. And so these Frankenstein Republicans in California are now freaking out and saying, we're not voting for Larry Elder. That was not why we did this. Oh, well, it appears you've lost control. I don't understand that. California's got to get a handle on some of this lunacy that they've got. The referenda, all this crapola. It doesn't seem to be helpful. I have a caller. Go right ahead.
Hello?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Hey, Lynn.
Yeah.
I agree with the caller who called me about the musicians back then and the ones now. I take like Keith Richards. He's a style of his own. He plays the 5 strings. He does drop D tuning. I mean, to play his music, I have to retune my guitar to play it. These are groundbreaking musicians who created B.B. King, Jimmy Page, Jimi Hendrix, all these guitarists created their own sound. And the ones nowadays, they have that sound to work off. These people were picking it, they were making it up as they go along because they had to create that sound. And that's why I think that's what he means. These people, they had to cut their teeth on nothing. You know what I mean? It was like, so that's how I feel about it. The music today, there's a lot of good music today. There's good musicians, yes. But that's groundbreaking stuff. I mean, Chet Atkins. I mean, I can name list after list of musicians that contribute so much to, that's the guitar aspect because I only know that. But even their drummer, he's a great drummer. So,
I don't know enough about music to make these kinds of judgments. I just know I really loved the Rolling Stones. And I love their music.
Distortion came out back then and broke in like British music and all. The whole thing, it was just groundbreaking as far as guitar playing, as far as I know. But I do agree with them on that. But there are ones that are good today, I got to admit. But they had a good sound. Or I should act like they're gone. They still have a good sound.
Yeah. I was going to say, don't sound like they're gone.
Don't say that.
3/4 of them are still here. Okay. Hey,
like Carlos Santana is another one. Santana.
Okay.
I mean, great. Okay. We'll see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye. Bye-bye. Chuck writes one thing about Charlie Watts. Yeah, I learned this from all the obits. He used a minimalist drum set. I mean, it's just like the drum set you'd buy for your kid if you wanted him to start learning drums. You see some drummers and they've got half an acre of drums and cymbals and God knows what's around them. And Charlie Watts, he had just a basic set. And Chuck writes, some of the best drummers took this approach. Max Weinberg, drummer for Bruce Springsteen, same thing. Charlie Watts was literally the heartbeat of that band. And I don't think they'll be the same without him. Yeah, but can't they just get a drummer? I mean, I know they have a standby drummer because he was going to do the tour, this most recent tour with them anyway, because Watts was ill. Can't the drummer, I mean, it's not like we don't know what Charlie Watts did. Can't the drummer just be told to do what Watts did? Don't do anything else. Just do Watts. It's not like they're playing new material anymore. Am I right? I mean, I'm not aware of any. So, I mean, whatever Watts did, why can't they just do that? Oh, I don't know. I still have, an address book, and it's an appointment book too. I'm on paper in that way. It's dog-eared. It's coming apart at the seams, and yet I use it. I don't use my phone, and I'm, in that it's not a statement I'm making. It's just what I'm used to, is easiest for me. And I happen to be looking for a phone number the other day, and I'm paging through my phone book, and I swear half the people in my phone book are dead. And this is a definite sign you're old if half the people in your book are dead. And a lot of them soon to be. So that's always sobering. I thought, should I cross them out? I mean, I wonder, even those of you who are on, have all that stuff, contacts and stuff on your phones, when somebody dies, you don't erase them, do you? I don't want to erase them. But it's remarkable. Just saying. It is really remarkable. Yeah. So, one more thing on Afghanistan, because I think I just saw this, last night? these two friggin' grandstanding fools, congressmen, bipartisan, one Republican, one Democrat, who flew into Kabul because they take their job seriously, and their job is oversight of the executive branch. And so these two idiots go flying in, didn't tell the State Department, didn't tell the Defense Department, didn't tell the White House, all of whom are ready to kill him. They fly in to do their work. What could they do except distract, which is what they did? What could they learn? They were on the ground less than 24 hours. And then they fly themselves back out on one of the charter planes that was leaving the airport. And that's the part that made me go crazy. Because two desperate people who should have been in those seats couldn't get on. Now, they insist we only want to go in what would be empty seats. How could there be empty seats when we're so desperately trying to get everybody we can out? Unbelievable. Really unbelievable. And that's another thing about politicians and politics now. There are two kinds of politicians. Well, there's probably more, but we're into binary stuff. There are politicians who become politicians and become elected officials because they really want to get something done. They have a definite point of view and they want to push forward those things that they think would benefit the country. And then there are other people who get into the business, didn't used to be a business of politics, because they want to get famous, because they want to be on TV, because they want to grandstand, because they want to have tons of Twitter followers and be a known entity. And they don't give two hoots about the actual job as envisioned by the people who created the country. The job of a senator, the job of a congressperson. And we see more and more and more of the latter. These people who are just in it for the glory, the money, the power, the fame. And it's, and I suppose there are some people who sort of straddle those lines. I think somebody like Fetterman would be one, because I see him as somebody who knows that he has the makeup of somebody who stands out, and he knows how to play the game of celebrity and personality and all of that. But I also do think he has a desire to move things forward. I don't know. When you think of the way we do politics now, stop and think if any of our great presidents would ever have been elected, and not a one of them would. Not a one of them. Abe Lincoln? You kidding me? Wouldn't fit the bill. It's too serious. Talks over people's heads. So I know he can tell a joke. He tells a good story too, but he's homely. My mother insists he's handsome. I think my brother says he's handsome too. I don't think he was handsome. I think he was grand. FDR, you can't have a president in a wheelchair. Looks weak. I don't know. God help us. And I didn't even get to the Wendy Bell story of the day. Damn it, I forgot. Okay, I'll get to it tomorrow. God almighty. Hey, thanks for being with me. And stay cool, stay safe, be careful, keep your head down. No, keep your head up. Keep hydrated. I don't know where that came from. And talk to you tomorrow.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.